first 5 rounds of the US Championship have taken place already in St. Louis, and it's shaping up to be a fantastic tournament. It's really fantastic fighting spirits. Today is actually a free day, so I thought it was time to take stock of what's actually been going on. 2 favourites in the tournament are Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley So, but they face fantastic competition from, well, players like Gatakamsky, who is still outrageously strong, and a whole host of younger challengers such as Sam Shankland, Caden Trough, and many others. So it's a really interesting mix of players. I'm going to focus on one game in particular, and that's between Conrad Holt, who's in his early 20s, and Hikaru Nakamura, the favourite in the tournament. This was played in round 1 actually, and it was a King's Indian, so Nakamura with the black pieces. We've discussed the King's Indian on this channel on a few occasions, and one of the last occasions was Kramnik's spectacular win against Nakamura in London at the end of 2014. So it's interesting that Nakamura is still happy to play it again. In this game, his opponent, Conrad Holt, plays h3, which is quite a trendy variation. I have to say I rather like this move. It aims to try to restrict Black's kingside play, and we'll see how this works in practice. So Nakamura played e5, okay, the standard move, and now we have this typical closed pawn structure. Knight h5, Black going for typical counterplay with the f pawn, and perhaps looking to play the knight into f4, g3, all normal so far, so the knight is prevented going into f4. Now you can play f5 here straight away, and this has been played quite a few times recently. This leads to very sharp positions after, for example, knight h4. Don't forget that queen is looking at the knight, or indeed knight g5. This is both very trendy continuations at the moment, but Nakamura bucks the trend and plays knight a6. Of course, a very standard King's Indian type move, looking to get into c5, but delaying kingside counterplay. Knight d2. Now this holds up f5 for the time being, because of course if this is played now, then Black is unable to capture with the g-pawn because the knight is on prise. So instead Nakamura played queen e8, again a standard move, so indirectly protecting the knight and setting up this threat of counterplay with f5. Bishop e2, so this knocks back the knight. You could play f5 here, but it's a little bit speculative, sacking your pawn, so the knight goes back. And round about here I have to say, it looks to me as though things have gone very well for White, because this early foray with Black's knight has been, well, beaten back. It's blocking the f-pawn again, and White is setting up this nice counterplay on the h-file, so this is going to sort of restrict Black's counterplay. And there we go, h5. Looks dangerous, but Nakamura gets his own counterplay rolling with f5. So h-file opens, and here, I don't know, White took on e5, which doesn't look bad at first glance, but I think I would be tempted to play knight f3 here and put that knight on g5 and possibly later the bishop on e3. For me that looks like a sort of more solid way for White to play the position, but e takes f5 also looks extremely tempting, given that a move like g takes f5, the normal move in the position, could be met by something like, well, this actually. I think it already looks very dangerous. Of course, I realise that Black can stop the threats of bishop h7, but here, I don't know, this could be very dangerous. But let's go back. Black did not play g takes f5. Instead, this is clearly what White was gunning for. Instead, Black played knight f6. Typical King's Indian pawn sacrifice. So White is a pawn up here, but I think Nakamura has got what he wants from this position. He's activated his queen, So he's ready to bring his bishop into play. Then he will have connected his rooks. And white's king, well, certainly it's not going to castle here. But it's a long way from getting to safety on the queen side as well. So suddenly black has fantastic counterplay here. If you run this position through a machine, then it still likes white's position very much. But I think in practical play, I think this is very difficult. Now you can see Nakamura threatening knight c2. The queen is hit back, but white still needs to deal with this threat. So Holt played king f1, and that king is now in the same line as that rook. And this it feels a bit uncomfortable for white. Again, if you run this through some chess software, it will say that white is doing fine. But suddenly, look what's happening to white's pieces. You know, the queen is blocking the bishop. If the bishop can't get out, the rook can't get out. The king and rook look a bit weird. I don't know. Nakamura starting to go forward. He's cleared the f-file. And here, well, like I said, you know, if you play this accurately with white and play like a machine, then probably white is better. You know, the machines like their extra pawns. For example, f3 here, which looks like an odd move to me, but the machine seems to quite like this move. And it still thinks that white should be doing okay here, but this looks very messy to me. Or it also likes knight g2, but that's certainly not an obvious move. Instead, white played a very tempting move, bishop f1. Tempting, why? Because this looks like a really powerful threat, and suddenly the boot is on the other foot. It's black's king that looks like it's in trouble with that rook on the h-file, on the open h-file. But Nakamura deals with this so coolly. Bishop d3. And now if just bishop g2, then the queen takes on c4 and white's pawn chain's collapsing. But this clearly wasn't white's idea, so bishop coming to h3 as we indicated before. But again, Nakamura deals with it very coolly. Knight c2. The bishop checked, but Nakamura simply blocks with his rook. He's not afraid to give up an exchange because the rest of his pieces, look, every picture tells a story. Black dominates the centre with his pieces, and here the rook in the corner could move, but the knight then swings to this fantastic square, and well, white's pawn chain is collapsing. It doesn't really matter if you take the rook. That's probably best for white, but I think it's already extremely difficult. Here white played knight f5, which again on the surface looks very dangerous. But now came knight e1. He'd obviously overlooked this crushing blow of Nakamura's. Queen g2, mate threatened. Knight f3, winning the queen threatened. Well, there were a couple of checks from white, but in this position he resigned. Well, why did he resign? There's one move which prevents, or seems to prevent, both these threats, and that's knight h4. It's a pity we didn't see this, and now comes the very pretty checkmate, knight f3. It's great stuff. It just shows you what a difficult opening to handle that the King's Indian is for both sides. But Nakamura really showed what a fantastic feel he has for the opening, and you know, maybe it needs a Kramnik to control black's counterplay in this kind of position. Let me just show you one more fragment from one of Nakamura's games. This was played in round 5. Nakamura had played a dragon variation, quite an old variation of the dragon actually, but had worked out very well. So Nakamura again with the black pieces, and white, well, white is, I should say, the player of the white pieces is Naroditsky, again a very young player who's coming through the ranks very well actually. He's tried to complicate the position, but Nakamura now found a beautiful way to win. You can take these bishop, but it's not the best. Bishop d3, what a great move. First of all, protects the knight. Second, threatens rook takes pawn. So c3 happened. Now rook c5, threatening the knight. The knight took the pawn, and now out of the blue, this was the point of rook c5, White's king finds itself in a mating net, and here White resigned. The only move is to give up the exchange, but that's clearly utterly lost for White. So a beautiful finish from Nakamura, and he, after 5 rounds, is in the lead. So the scores at the moment: Nakamura with 4 points, Wesley So with 3.5. Those are the top 2 in the tournament. By the way, they've already played. They played in round 4 and drew quite an interesting game. So had the better of it, but Nakamura drew without too much difficulty in the end. And then following them, Gatakamsky, Ray Robson and Caden Trough with 3 out of 5. So, well, it's a 12-player, all-play-all tournament, so 11 rounds. And what I love about it is that, anyone can beat anyone in the tournament. It's some fantastic games are being played. So I'll be reporting again later on in the tournament, but do watch out for the results of the US Championship 2015.